Well, hello, friends, and welcome back to Sacrifice and Salvation, our Bible study on Holy Week here at Chapel by the Sea on Fort Myers Beach, Florida. I'm Dr. Jim Berger, the interim pastor. It's my pleasure to welcome you in person, and those of you online, as we continue with our study of what happened in the final week of Jesus' life, all the events from Palm Sunday all the way through the resurrection. So today we're going to focus on Jesus on trial. Now, the reason this is significant is that, wait a minute, sorry, I'm tripping over my cord here. The reason this is significant is all this stuff takes place illegally. It's a kangaroo trial. And so as we go forward, you'll see that there's all kinds of power plays going on here. Last Sunday in church, in my sermon about upsetting the apple cart, remember I told you that when Jesus cleansed the temple, he attacked all the moneymakers for the high priest family. All those vendors, all the vendors in the temple were working on a franchise basis, and Caiaphas and his father-in-law Annas owned all the franchises. And so there's power and there's money at play, as well as the religious and the political dimensions to it. So it's a very complex story. We left off last week where Jesus had just been arrested by the temple guards, and they take him to the home of Caiaphas. And Caiaphas convenes the Sanhedrin there with all the 72 elders. And it's an open format house. And so Peter and John end up down in the courtyard below, so they can watch what's going on and hear what's going on in the house. And they're sitting around a fire, keeping warm. What's significant is, under Jewish law, trials must be held in daylight. It's against their law to convene in the darkness to try somebody. When I was in the Bahamas, the marriage law said marriages are to be conducted between 6 a.m. and 8 p.m. with open doors. And the meaning was it had to happen in daylight. You could not do it after dark. You couldn't do it under cover of darkness, sneak off and do the secret wedding. No, it had to be in daylight, and there had to be witnesses. So Peter is watching down below. John knew somebody inside, so he got in easily, and then went back and brought Peter in. So they're in the courtyard down below as Jesus is in the house with Caiaphas and the other members of the Sanhedrin. They're trying to find something to use to convict him. And they've got conflicting stories from the witnesses. Nobody can come up with the same story. Nobody can come up with anything worthy of a capital offense, capital punishment. So that's what they're looking for. Meanwhile, Peter, down below, is hanging out with the other people around the fire, keeping warm. And as he's sitting there, a servant girl sees him and says, "Wait a minute, you were with him. You're one of them." And he says, "No, I'm not. I don't know the man." Now, what's significant is he's being accused by a woman. And in Jewish culture, her word has no power, has no authority at all. And so he can just tell her to drop dead or, get lost, and he's within his right. But he's saying, no, I don't know the guy. It happens again. Somebody else says, "No, I know you were with him." The third guy finally comes up and says, "Wait a minute, your accent gives you away. You're a Galilean." Now, just like you can tell if somebody is from Boston or from Birmingham, Alabama, you can tell the difference in their accents. The same way in Jesus's world. I grew up in New Jersey. And it was only the whole state's only 90 miles long. And yet I could identify, even as a teenager, I could tell by a person's speech whether they're from South Jersey, Central New Jersey, or Northern New Jersey. And one of the key words was W-A-T-E-R. If you're from South Jersey, that's pronounced water. If you're from Central Jersey, it's pronounced water. If you're from North Jersey, it's pronounced water. But there was 3 distinct speech patterns just in that small area. This is no different. The Galileans have a different accent than the people in Jerusalem. And so as he's saying all this, he hears the rooster crow. And he remembers Jesus' words, "Peter, before the cock crows twice, you will deny knowing me 3 times. And when he hears this, as that happens, Jesus turns from up there in the house and looks out at the courtyard and sees Peter and catches his eye after Peter's denied him 3 times. And Peter goes out just stricken. He goes out and weeps bitterly. Now, one of the things I want us to notice is everybody has deserted Jesus. Nobody stuck with him. They all ran off and fled. Judas betrayed him, but nobody else stood up for him either. So Judas may be more guilty than the others, but nobody's innocent in this case. Everybody fails the test. Peter goes out and weeps. Meanwhile, the priests are still trying to get somebody to come up with something they can use to convict Jesus. They're saying, he said he was going to tear this temple down and rebuild it in 3 days. And or can you really do that? No, back and forth. No clear accusation. So finally, Caiaphas is at his wit's end, and he's got the whole Sanhedrin standing there wanting to know, what are we going to do? So he asks a question that is not supposed to be asked. Are you the Christ, the Son of the living God? And Jesus answers directly and says, you have said so, and you shall see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of glory. That's a quote from the book of Daniel. So the priest says, we don't need witnesses. That you've heard his blasphemy. He's convicted himself. What do you say? And he rends his robe. He rips his robe open to show that he's heard blasphemy. And the whole council says he's guilty. Okay, so now they're going to take him to Pilate because they have no authority to put him to death. And they have to get him, they have to have something to tell Pilate, this man is deserving of death. So when they get to, and there's no love between the priests and Pilate. They hate each other's guts. And Pilate's been a very heavy-handed, brutal governor. And he's not at all popular with the Jews. And he's been guilty of several atrocities, we know from things that Jesus said, where he just had people killed because of what they were doing without trial. So they take him to Pilate at the break of dawn, first thing. Good morning. This man has been upsetting the people and preaching sedition, and you need to kill him. You need to execute him. What's he done? If he hadn't done something wrong, we wouldn't have brought him to you. So he takes Jesus and he examines him. He says, what are they saying about you? And Jesus doesn't answer. And he says, are you a king? And he says, you said so. And he says, I've come to bear witness to the truth. And Pilate's classic response is, yeah, what's truth? So the priests are saying he's causing trouble with the people. He's stirring them up. And Pilate can find nothing to justify executing this guy. So they say he's been stirring up trouble here and in Galilee. Oh, he's a Galilean. Okay. Herod's in charge of Galilee, and Herod's in town for the Passover. So now he's Herod's problem. So he sends him over to Herod. And Herod has heard about this guy and is excited to see him, but he wants him to perform a miracle for him or do some tricks for him. And Jesus refuses, and Jesus won't answer back. And Herod's trying to get him to say something that will incriminate him, and he doesn't. And Herod's like, don't you understand? I can have you executed. And he's saying, you have no authority except what comes from my heavenly Father. The priests are there too, and they're trying to stir up trouble. They're trying to drum up some kind of a charge against Jesus to no effect, to no avail. Nobody can come up with something that's worthy of a capital offense. So Herod plays with him, teases him. They find an old royal robe and put it on him, a purple robe, and make fun of him, slap him around a bit, and then they send him back to Pilate. So back he goes to Pilate. Pilate doesn't want him back. And the priests have stirred up the crowd inside the area where Pilate is. They have not entered Pilate's house, because if they do, they're unclean for the Passover. So they have to stay outside. So all this is taking place in the courtyard outside Pilate's residence. And they've got the crowd chanting, crucify him, crucify him. And he's saying, why? What has he done? Crucify him, crucify him. And then two things happen. One, Pilate's wife sends word to him saying, have nothing to do with this man because I suffered greatly in a dream because of him. She's sensing something's going on with this guy, that he's more than just, a prophet from Galilee. And the other piece is they remind him during the festival, it's the tradition that he will release one prisoner to them, grant one of them, a pardon. So they're all screaming, crucify him. And he says, I'll tell you what, I'll give you a choice. Who shall I release to you? Jesus of Nazareth or Barabbas, the criminal, the guy that's killed a couple of people and was caught causing a riot. And the crowd all shout, give us Barabbas. What should I do with Jesus? Crucify him. He says, would you have me crucify your king? And then they shout back, we have no king but Caesar. Now there's the blasphemy by the people. So Pilate relents finally, and he says, you would have me crucify your king. So he calls for water to be brought, and he washes his hands in front of the people. And he says, I wash my hands of this. His blood be on your heads. And they scream back, it shall be on our heads and the heads of our children. That's the basis for a lot of the anti-Semitism that we see in the world, is that statement at that moment to justify anti-Semitic actions. It doesn't wash because they don't kill him, the Romans do. So Pilate turns him over to the cohort, to the soldiers, and they take him down. They plaque the crown of thorns, put it on his head, beat him, and now he's flogged. And that's where we're going to pick up next time. But the flogging is particularly brutal. It's a five-strand flail that they use with metal spikes or bone spikes in the end. And the guideline for how it was to be used is when a flogging was ordered, you were to beat the person until the flesh on their back hung in strips. So that's what Jesus is in for next. So all this has taken place in the darkness, outside of proper channels. None of it could stand up if it was reviewed by the Supreme Court or by a court of appeals. And in a matter of 12 hours, he's gone from the Garden of Gethsemane to conviction, and he's on his way to the cross. And all this is taking place in a very, very short time. It's all happening fast. And everybody's overwhelmed by it too. So as all these events unfold, the disciples are still hiding. Somehow his mother and his aunts and other women find out about it, and they come to, you will see next week, they come to the crucifixion, and only John shows up. All the others are in hiding. So that's where we pick up next time. Jesus is going to be crucified in our next section, and we'll find out just how awful this means of execution was, and just how widespread it was too. It's really shocking when we look into it. So that's where we are as we continue with Sacrifice and Salvation here at Chapel by the Sea on Fort Myers Beach. I'm Dr. Jim Berger. Thank you for joining me, and thank you for joining me. And we shall continue with our study as we look at what happens in Jesus's life during those last few hours leading up to the resurrection. God bless you. Have a wonderful day, and we'll pick this up next time.